Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
Do you have plans for your business once government funding comes to an end? Because it's likely to be a wobbly journey back to standing on your own 2 feet. From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. It's true that some businesses have survived COVID quite nicely, thank you. Some have even thrived. But other businesses have barely skated through, propped up by government support and with ever-diminishing resources, as they now look to the future after 12 months of hardship. Is it time to talk to the bank? According to Angela Winton, a former banker herself, who now heads Mazars' specialist banking and finance team, securing business finance has never been more challenging. It's important, she says, to prepare your business case carefully. You also need to be talking to the right people at the right bank. Heather Dawson asks Angie, from a banking and finance perspective, how she's viewed the past 12 months since the onset of COVID.
Many businesses actually started the year of 2020 with quite a limited liquidity position. So some with actually less than 1 month of cash buffer and no or very limited access to emergency funding. So as a consequence of this, these businesses invariably survived through that COVID lockdown using their working capital sources. So effectively this meant selling inventory, sometimes at discounted prices, and collecting creditors to generate cash, and without actually replacing inventory or making new sales. So they really did have a hole to fill at some point in the future. Fortunately, the government stimulus did kick in the form of JobKeeper, grants and emergency loans, which did allow many of these businesses to tread water for about 9 months. But what we're seeing now, though, is a need for these businesses to recapitalise and access working capital funding to permit them to grow their sales again, which requires inventory and other costs of goods.
So businesses need then to access finance. So what are you seeing as the big challenges around that for businesses to access finance?
Well, during the height of COVID, banks were empowered by government stimulus settings to be able to provide businesses with access to defer payments and some concessional lending. The banks were responsive. They set up dedicated hotlines, streamlining application processes and, reducing the usual assessment conditions. But much of this support was really a survival in nature sort of mode and really just provided a bridge to the other side of this extreme COVID lockdown situation. Further lending actually, opposed to just payment deferrals, was really still quite challenging for banks because there was an ongoing need for responsible lending. So it wasn't until additional responsible lending conditions were relaxed that we actually started to see some money flow in that new lending. The major challenge for businesses now really relates to dealing with the consequences of taking these increased loans and kicking the repayments down the road effectively, whilst actually simultaneously having to rebuild their capacity to fund business growth. So more than ever, businesses need access to working capital to do this.
What are the banks looking for in order to support a business with this rebuild working capital, if you like?
Well, the banks really need to see clear capital needs and how the business plans to use that productively to grow their business. So by default, banks are cautious. They look for risks. So the onus is really on the business to demonstrate business viability and sustainability. And given the period of uncertainty that we've come through, it's critical that a funding request is accompanied by a clear plan articulating how the business is going to be resilient in the future, potentially demonstrating appropriate cost cutting, varied channels to market and strategies for profitable sales growth. Successful funding requests need to demonstrate the business plan with a concise narrative and also a business cash flow. It's crucial to demonstrate that the business owner has a handle on the cash demands of the business.
Well, in your experience, Angie, what differentiates one banking solution from another? Because there are plenty of choices out there.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And banking solutions, they need to be fit for purpose. And you would be surprised by the difference in appetite for a specific funding request from one bank to another. In fact, the appetite varies from team to team within banks. For example, the small business team, they can provide different solutions from the business banking team. So talking to the right banker can make a big difference in securing a loan. A recent client that I was working with, they had good predictable cash flows, minimal debt other than equipment finance, and they were looking to borrow against their business cash flows to buy out a silent partner. So whilst they had a great relationship with their current bank, they hadn't made any progress in 2 months towards getting a loan arranged. And with a few calls, we were able to confirm that their current bank didn't actually have a cash flow lending policy suitable for their industry, but 2 other lenders did. And then we secured term sheets for them to consider within a couple of weeks. So we really encourage our clients not to suffer in silence. Times have never been more challenging to secure business finance, so really encourage clients to reach out. We'd be delighted to help. My whole team are all ex-bankers, so we know how to deal with our counterparts in the banking industry and really can make a big difference in cutting through to access the right bank at the right time for the right purpose.
That was Angela Winton, Head of Mazars Banking and Finance team. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.